You're listening to the Born to Kick-Ass podcast with Matt Tomasi and can be found at borntokickass.com/episode 59.
Welcome to the Born to Kick-Ass podcast, where you're introduced to the most fascinating people on the planet. Learn the ingredients of greatness that you can apply to your life. And now your host, Matthew Tomasi.
Mimi Anderson is one of the toughest athletes on the face of the planet, who has set world records for the fastest run from the top to the bottom of both Great Britain and Ireland. Mimi is the first female to have ever completed a double-Comrades, as well as a double-Spartahlon, which is a grueling 153 miles each way from Athens to Sparta. In 2011, Mimi also completed a double-Badwater. This infamous ultramarathon is run in the middle of summer, where temperatures have reached as high as 135 degrees Fahrenheit or 57 degrees Celsius. Mimi is the double-crossing female course record holder, covering 146 miles each way from Badwater in Death Valley to the summit of Mt Whitney. In this episode, Mimi shares what it was like to suffer from anorexia for 15 years and gives an insight into the mindset of someone who has transcended limitations. Enjoy the interview. Mimi Anderson, welcome to the Born to Kick-Ass podcast.
Hi, Matt. Nice to meet you.
Now, you have got a jaw-dropping resume, which we're going to dive into. Like a lot of the ultras that you've done, not many people have, like on the planet or in history, have ever completed these ultras, like Badwater and Spartathlon and things like that. But you sort of taken it to a whole new realm, and we'll get into that shortly. But can you maybe give listeners a background of like where you're based and where you grew up? Did you grow up in England?
No. Well, some of my life I was. I was an army child, so my father was in the army. So I was born in Singapore, and then we went to Germany and then to Norway. So I had quite a sort of a few countries that I lived in first. And then from about 12, I lived in Edinburgh, which is where I lived for the rest of my life before I came to Kent. Yeah. So I now live in the southeast. Yeah, yeah. So there's much in Scotland.
Yeah. My dad was in the army as well, and every sort of 2 years or 18 months, we'd move around Australia. You know, sort of growing up until the age of 12. You know, every couple of years we'd move around. But that was unique. But I
think it's a great way to see different places actually and experience. Yeah. And you have to become quite a resilient child because, of course, you're moving schools all the time, meeting new people. Yeah. So you just have to get on with it, don't you?
And were you always sort of sporty growing up? Were you like always a runner, or what sort of sports were you into, if any, when you were growing up?
Well, when we were in Norway, we did a lot of skiing, and my father was a great sailor, so we used to do some sailing, which I have to say wasn't keen on. I'm not a water baby, so the sea absolutely terrified me, so I haven't pursued that one. And I did a lot of cycling and things just with the family. But when I was at school, I was more a team sports person, so I played hockey and netball and rounders and things like that. Because back in the sort of the dark ages, when I was at school, we didn't have athletics. Yeah. So I think the only running I ever did was running up and down a pitch. So I never actually specifically went outside to sort of do any running. Yeah. So to me, it was always a sports, a team sport. That's what I seem to enjoy most of all.
What age did you sort of get into running, or how did you get into it? What sort of kicked that sort of spark off, or your awareness of running?
Well, I didn't actually start running until I was 36, so I was quite old at that stage. And I'd got 3 children, and I'd never really liked the shape of my legs. I'd always dreamt that one day, in a different life, I would have lovely thin legs. And somebody told me that if I wanted thin legs, I had to take up running, because that would sort of help them. So that's what I did. I went and stood on a treadmill and taught myself how to run.
Yep.
So total vanity.
Yeah. Okay. Were, the distances you were doing at that age, from about 36, was it just like a regular thing? Were you sort of going for 5K runs here and there type thing, or did you just jump straight into the deep end?
No, well, I started by literally, when I first got on the treadmill, I had no idea really what I was doing. I'd never been actually on a treadmill. And again, back then, you didn't really see people running around the streets with packs on, or, you just didn't really see people running. Whereas now, you step out your front door and you've got people running past your house or whatever. So I just started by setting myself a goal of running for a mile. And when I achieved that, I then set myself another goal to run for 3 miles without stopping. So it all started really quite small steps. And then I built up until eventually I was doing sort of half marathons. And then from the half marathon, I went right up into the big stuff.
Yeah.
I seem to miss out the marathon stage.
You just skipped the marathon and just went full on.
I did. It seemed like a good thing to do at the time.
Yeah.
It made sense to me. So.
Yeah. You also suffered from anorexia. Can you maybe tell us about that? Well, what sort of age was that? Can you maybe just sort of share some info about that?
Well, for me, it started, I went to boarding school, and because my father obviously was in the army, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I was probably a chubby child. I was never overweight, but I was probably chubby. So at about 14 or coming up to 14, I was always being sort of teased at school about being fat, and, the girls would make some snide little comments about my weight. And I'd never thought about my weight up until then. I ate normally. I felt happy with myself. And so, but these little comments kept on going on and on and on until eventually I just thought, well, perhaps I am fat. Perhaps, they're right and I'm wrong. So I went on a normal diet. So basically for me, I just didn't have second helpings for any meals, and I didn't have puddings. Yeah. And I lost a bit of weight. I was quite happy. These comments carried on. Anyway, eventually I stopped eating. A friend of mine came back, I remember, during the summer holidays, and she had always been bigger than me, and she looked like sort of a walking skeleton. I thought, my goodness, how can she do that? And I can't. Anyway, I did lose, over the next few weeks and months, I lost quite a lot of weight. And you become obsessed. You don't set out to become an anorexic. It's just because it is a mental illness, and it takes over your life. I found that I was lying about food. If somebody said, "Oh, Mimi, have some of that," I said, "No, don't worry, I've eaten already." You'd find ways to get rid of food. I would purge my body. I would take. At one stage, I was taking 2 packets of laxatives a day, just to get rid of anything that I did eat. It is the most horrible illness.
So were you like starving yourself, or was it like just a gradual reduction in your food intake, or was it just straight up you just didn't eat for like days?
Well, it started off with a gradual reduction in my food. Yep. And then because that wasn't working fast enough, because I was still getting all these sort of comments and things, I then would start skipping meals. And that, people were still making comments. At this stage, I don't know how much I'd lost, but I was definitely much thinner. And then I just stopped eating. Yeah. Yep. So I would live off coffee and water, which is not very healthy.
Yeah. And how long did this go on for?
It went on for about 15 years. So I mean, I was very, very lucky in that when I got married, I mean, my husband knew I had an eating problem because, you can't hide it. You think that, people don't know about it. But, when you disappear halfway through supper and you go and throw up your food, or, going out, or Christmases were just awful because it was all revolved around food. I could never understand why people were so fascinated by food and wanted to eat all the time. Yeah. So it went on until I was till after I had my second child, when I eventually, the cycle then began again. Yeah. I just thought, I can't carry on my life like this. Not just for me, actually, it was more for my children, because the thought of them seeing me behave in this way and think that it was normal to not eat and just do what I was doing was just, it wasn't right. You can't bring children into this world and then, behave like that. So that's why I got help in the end.
So were you aware of your energy levels just being depleted at all times? Were you, because you would have been running on gas fumes sort of day in, day out for years and years. Were you aware that, you had anorexia? Or were you aware that, your energy levels would have been completely, depleted all the time? Were you sort of aware of that?
No, not really. For me, it seemed quite normal. I never felt, so I could still play my sport and do all of that. I don't know where I got my energy from. I seem to have stored it up in my big toe, and it released it when I sort of needed it. So that it became quite normal. So I never thought about that. And it wasn't really until just before I did my O-levels, as they were now, they're GCSEs now, that I actually got glandular fever. And I was so ill because of my eating disorder that the school just couldn't cope with me at all. So I had to be flown home and up to Scotland. And when I got home, I slept for a whole week. Yeah. I think that's when I realised that, perhaps I needed to eat a little bit more. But it was difficult because you just don't want to. Yeah. If people try and force you to eat, you just go into this rebellious mode. My mother would say, well, come on, I noticed you haven't had a potato, have a potato. Now, I might have had a potato had she not said anything. Yeah. But because she mentioned it and drew attention to the fact that I wasn't eating a potato, I would then not eat it. So, it's a little bit of it's a bit of a catch-22 situation, isn't it? You want to eat it sometimes, but actually you won't allow yourself to.
So how did you sort of recognise, was there a particular moment when the penny sort of dropped and you realised that you did have an illness, and then you tried to sort of turn things around? Was there a particular moment when you sort of realised that?
Well, I think I knew for quite a few years that I had an issue, but I couldn't. It's like anything, whether you're an alcoholic or you're a drug addict. It is an addiction to a certain extent, and you can't get help. You can't get help until you are ready yourself to do it. So my mother actually tried to get me some help before I got married. But I functioned on it. My life seemed to be working. I was very lucky that I could have children because I was told years beforehand that I may never have children. So from that respect, I was incredibly lucky. But I think what really got it in the end, or made me realize, was that, I just thought I can't carry on my life avoiding food, obsessing about food 24 hours a day, and making my life miserable, making my husband's life miserable, and eventually, my goodness, it would make my children's life miserable. I didn't want to be that person because I knew actually I wasn't that person. Yep. I'm not a great foodie, but I knew that I could be a better person. And just the thought of throwing up and taking laxatives and doing all that for the rest of my life was just horrendous, actually. It was a horrible thought. So that's when I had to go and get help. Yeah.
If you sort of see, or if you mentioned before, if people sort of reach out to you who are suffering from this illness, what sort of tips, or do you have any sort of tips for people who are suffering from anorexia to try and help them see the light, or to try and help them somewhat to get back onto, I guess, a normal or regular eating regime? Is there any sort of tips there that you could provide? Or
I tend to, if somebody sort of reaches out and gives, wants sort of just help, or they have a friend or who wants help. I mean, the trouble is, if you have a friend who has got an eating problem, again, the same with me, there's very little you can do. You can be there, support them as a friend, absolutely, but there's little you can do to really help them until they're ready and they turn around to you and say, actually, now I need some help. And it is difficult. You can't switch. You can't go from not eating to suddenly eating normally again. It's really slow steps. And I always say to people, just take one day at a time. Sometimes you can't even do one day, it's just half a day, but it's little steps. And eventually, you will get there. You will be able to cope with, normal life. I don't think it totally ever goes away. You cope with it, you deal with it. I mean, I eat normally. But I think a little bit of it always stays with you.
Yep.
But I think it's just be nice to yourself. Don't beat yourself up all the time. And little steps, small steps, and eventually you will get there.
Now, if we sort of fast forward to sort of post that phase in your life, when you're sort of your normal day-to-day life outside of racing, those periods between your big races and your big adventures, how do you approach your normal sort of day-to-day nutrition and what you eat sort of normally? Are you fairly strict in terms of what you eat to be able to fuel yourself for, the runs that you do, or not?
No. Nutrition is, when I actually go do races, actually my crew will get quite cross with me. I think because I spent so many years obsessing about food, and I never counted calories, but, you're always aware of what went into your mouth. And so for me, the fact that I'm now eating normally, and, there was a stage where I wouldn't even have my own plate at mealtime. I would pile up my husband's plate with food, and I would eat food off his plate so that I didn't see what I was eating. So, that's how bad I was. And so I think for me now, in between races and my training, I try and have a good all-round healthy, food,
yep.
And a diet.
Yep.
And that seems to work quite well. I think I do try and I do eat, healthily. I also like to have unhealthy stuff every so often, and I do like my glass of wine, but I don't want to get obsessed about it.
Yep.
But so I do try and have a good, healthy, balanced diet is what I try and do, with the occasional naughty stuff thrown in, because I think that's essential.
Yeah. Now, if you've committed to a race or a massive sort of adventure, like let's just say it's 5 months from now or 6 months from now, and you've started the ball rolling and you've mentally made a commitment that you're going to make a push for this next thing, do you then start to refine your diet at all as closer you get to sort of day one or reaching the start line? Do you sort of change your diet somewhat in that respect, or not, or do you just sort of go what you eat sort of normally?
No, I mean, I think I would continue eating what I would eat sort of normally. I don't really, I think depending on what sort of race it's going to be. So if it's a self-sufficiency race, it's sort of, that's never too bad. If it's a really big one, then I will try and again, this is quite difficult actually and goes completely against my sort of grain. But, if I do a cold race, I'll try and put on some weight because I know the bigger the longer the race, I'm going to lose some. But I do find that difficult. So no, I don't tend to refine my diet. I will give up things. So I'll stop, my alcohol, and I'll stop things like that. But my diet will sort of remain really the same. Yes, I'm not. I think people despair of me sometimes because I should perhaps be much more sort of nutrition savvy. It's just that I just don't want to start focusing on food again, having done it for such a long time.
Yeah. Now, do you remember your first ultra? The first
I
one
do. Well,
yeah.
Well, my very, very, very first sort of one, which was actually a training run for my for the Marathon des Sables, was a race called the Thames Meander. And it goes along the River Thames. Yeah. And that particular is a 54 miles. So it was perfect training. And myself and the two girls that I raced the MDS with, we went and did it with our full backpacks. And it was very funny because the Thames was flooded. So we had to do lots of diversions onto the road. And there was a point at night where we were crossing this quite busy road. Yeah. I was sort of in the middle of this road, and Louise and Max were going, Mimi, come on, get a move on. And I said, I can't move. Everything's too heavy. And this lorry was coming towards me. So you have to do this sort of shuffle across the road. Do you know, it was great fun. Yeah. Couldn't walk the next day, but I just loved it. And I remember thinking, wow, I've just run 54 miles. Yeah. It was such a mega achievement for me. I just was it was lovely. And we laughed all the way along. It was fantastic.
So that was a training run for the MDS, was it?
It was because, again, back then there were no training plans on your laptops and things. And in fact, computers, most people didn't have laptops, they didn't exist, but computers at home because it was so expensive. So we'd sort of decided, we'd made up our training plan, which actually was fantastic. If you look at it now compared to training plans that are online, actually we did really, really well, and decided that we needed to get a 54 miler under our belt, so that when we went and did the MDS, we would be more confident because we'd know that we could do the distance. Yeah. So that's what we did. And it was just, it was terrifying, but it was just such a laugh. And it was fun.
What was the MDS like when you actually completed it, or like during the run? The 6-day stage race. How hard was that, and how much fun was it?
It was for me. It was very hard because I became quite ill. Actually, I couldn't keep any of my food or my drinks down, so I ended up having 5 bags of intravenous drip, which I think now is I think you get penalty points for that now. Yep. And I remember literally going to the medical tent at the end of day 3. So this was the day before our longest day. And I literally went there to go and sort my own feet out. I had no intention of seeing the dock trotters at all because they massacre your feet. Well, they don't. They actually are very good. But I didn't want anybody else touching my feet. And I just collapsed in the tent. And so I had to be taken into the main tent, where I was then eventually given the IV drips. So for me, it was a hard race, but it was made the better because we had a fantastic tent. The whole experience, you wake up in the morning and they come and take your tents away. Well, they're not tents really; they're just sort of these bits of canvas held up by sticks. And they roll up the mats that you sleep on. And so I remember one morning sitting on one of these mats, having my breakfast and just looking up over these amazing sand dunes and just thinking, well, how many people in the world will ever get to see something like this? It beats any 5-star hotel. It was just fantastic. So although it was tough, it was, it taught me a lot. And it was an amazing experience. Again, we laughed, we giggled. We cried. So no, it was fantastic.
With the blister treatment, I think I might have seen like a documentary on YouTube or something like that, but I do remember some sort of doco that it might have been on the MDS that when they treat blisters, I think one approach was to literally cut the entire blister off. Is that something? Is that true, or is that like a wives' tale, or is that? I think that might be an approach that like the Moroccans or the French sort of take. I don't know if that's true or not, but is that true?
Well, as far as yes, because a friend of mine, I don't know whether they still do it now, but certainly then that's what they did. So I think people who had done the race before had said, grown men cry literally when they're having their feet. So it was something that I was going to not have done. So for me, I just did my usual foot care. And it worked quite well. Whereas Max, one of my teammates, actually did go to Doc Trotters, and they took the blister, the skin off the blister. I think it's to stop infection, or and they put iodine and stuff on it. So I'm a bit of a coward when it comes to that sort of thing. So I'd rather do it myself.
So just with blister management, I can sort of guess that you've had your fair share of blisters over the years. How do you approach, like if you're running along, either in training or you got on a race or some sort of expedition, if you can feel like a bit of a hot spot starting to develop, how do you have a special technique or tips that you use yourself when you can sort of feel a blister starting to kick in?
If I sort of, it depends really sort of on the sort of the race, but usually if I have sort of a little bit of a hot spot, I'll get to a checkpoint. And I've got this stuff, it's sort of moleskin, sort of fabric-y stuff that I then put sort of on top of my sock, which then stops the rubbing. But there are occasions where the blister literally just seems to appear, and it's quite uncomfortable for a little bit. And I just think, well, probably this is completely wrong, because I always say to people, you should stop and deal with your blisters straight away to stop them getting worse. So I'll feel my blisters sort of growing in my foot, and it then becomes quite uncomfortable. And suddenly it's fantastic. You hear this pop sound, and the blister pops, and all the pain's gone. So you just carry on running. So, and I deal with it when I get to the finish line.
You deal with it when you take your socks off and you see the aftermath.
I mean, I don't, if I'm racing and it's sort of a non-stop one, I very rarely, and again, everybody's different, but I never take my shoes and socks off unless I have to, because I always think that my feet have got into a nice, comfortable position. And so if I take my shoes and socks off, then they're having to settle back into the shoes and things again. So, and I've been quite lucky. It's worked quite well. If I'm doing an expedition or a slightly longer one, then I'm happy to stop and take my trainers off and get it sorted, because, obviously it's longer. So that's what I have to do.
So usually, rule of thumb for you, like if it's like a single stage ultra, you just stay with the same pair of socks the whole way?
I do, yes.
What about change of shoes? Do you sort of change your shoes at all, like 2/3 of the way in? Or like on a single stage ultra, or you just stay with the same pair the whole way?
I tend to stay with the same pair the whole way. I can't remember a time on a single stage one where I've changed my trainers. Except the Arctic one I did, but then that was slightly different. But a sort of 100-miler or something like the Spartathlon or whatever, I will stick to the same trainers.
Now, after the the MDS that you did, the first one, did that sort of really whet your appetite with regards to ultras and sort of really open your eyes to that, that sort of path?
Oh, yes. I mean, I think for me, it was so far-fetched from my normal life, mother, 3 children, wife, which I loved, but it was just such an adventure that I never thought that this would be anything that I could ever possibly do, which is why I think I did it in the first place, because, the opportunity arose. So, and I think my husband, who is, I have to say, he's an avid supporter now, but at the time, I think it was a case of, let the wife go and do this, and then, it'll get it out of her system. And unfortunately for him, it sort of didn't. And I mean, it's just fantastic, isn't it? I mean, I've got 2 lives. I've got my normal life, and then I've got my running life. And they do meet up every so often, but it's fantastic. I mean, I don't understand why anybody wouldn't want to go and do it. You travel the world, you see things that nobody else will ever get to see, you experience things. It is simply, I mean, just fantastic. Amazing, love it.
So some of the, I'll just rattle off some of the achievements that you've done that I'm just looking on your website. The 6633 Extreme Ultramarathon, and 6633, that's the latitude and longitude, isn't it? Or is that sort of...
It is a big circle, yeah.
Yeah, and that's That's right up the top of the world. A 252-mile self-sufficient non-stop race in the Arctic, which you won in course record. You've got multiple world records. Some of the ones that you've done, like I just want to paint a picture for listeners. Like, you know, if you type into Google, you know, toughest ultras in the world or toughest challenges in the world, often Badwater comes up. It's sort of, you know, it's right up there, if not the toughest ultra out there. And not many people in the world have completed Badwater, but you've done a double-Badwater. That's when did you entertain the idea of not only are you going to attempt the toughest ultra on Earth, or one of them, but you're going to do it twice? When did that sort of idea pop into your mind?
Well, I think when I started doing ultras, Badwater kept on sort of popping up. So I did the MDS in 2001, and I did a bit of research into Badwater, and I just thought, I've got to go and do that. It was so out there in terms of the heat, the extremeness, and I just knew that I had to go and do it. So I qualified for it in 2004, and in those days, the whole process of entering the race was all done via mail. So it's, now I think it's done online, isn't it? And anyways, I got given a place, and yes, it was hard. I mean, I did a lot of heat training and acclimatization, but you get out there and that heat, just hits you. It's like running in an oven the whole time. But it is one of those amazing, amazing races where you meet some extraordinary people. I mean, I remember standing in 2005, standing on the start line. I was in the 10 o'clock start, which is supposed to be, the elite start, which always make me laugh, actually, because I'm not an elite runner. I was there with Scott Jurek and, all these sort of people, and Pam Reed. And I remember thinking, oh, my goodness, what am I doing here? I'm in the wrong place. But it was an amazing experience. It was really hard, but it was fantastic. And I finished, and, I got my buckle. I was really, really pleased. And I went back and I crewed for a friend of mine the following year. And it wasn't till after I'd done that, and my friend Mark Cobain had done the double. He's an English runner. And I thought, So I did a bit more research and discovered that the record for the female double was, and I can't remember the exact time, but I remember looking at that and thinking, well, that's doable to break, isn't it? So that was my sort of incentive, was to go out, do the race, summit Mt Whitney, turn around and go back and see if I could break the record that had been sort of set, which thankfully I managed to do. I think I took over 21 hours off the previous female record at that stage.
So just for listeners, the double-Badwater's 292 miles, and you did it in just over 108 hours. When you've completed the first leg, how long did you sort of take at the halfway point? Did you rest for a bit, or was it sort of fairly quick turnaround and then back down you went?
Well, the original plan was because I can't remember exactly the time that I finished the actual race, but the original plan was to start summiting Mt Whitney. So once you get to the portals, which is the finish, you then go up to the top of Mt Whitney and then come all the way down and then go back to the start. Yep. And so my plan was to start summiting Mt Whitney at midnight. But that particular year, the mountain had actually been closed for the past 3 days to hikers because they'd had an unusual amount of snow. So I was quite worried that actually they wouldn't allow us up, which meant that, of course, the longer you can't go up, the more time, because the clock continues to tick. So my guide said he wasn't happy to take us up because of the ice and things until about 4 o'clock in the morning. So we had to sort of slightly make up the time later. So, but literally 4 o'clock in the morning, up that mountain, beautiful, beautiful day. My goodness, we were lucky. got to the top of Mount Whitney, and you look down and the views are just stunning. You know, the sun was shining. It was really cold, very, very windy, but it was a beautiful day. And then we came all the way back down. And as we were coming down the mountain, I was quite tired at this stage. And I turned around to my crew, or one of my crew members, and I said, if Becky, who is my head crew, is going to make me run all the way down to Lone Pine now, I'm not going to do it. I was being quite stubborn. I was, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I want to sleep. And we arrived back at the portals. And Becky said, right, you've got 90 minutes, Mimi. Food, you're going to sleep. We've set up a sleeping bag in the car for you, and then we're going to run down to Lone Pine. And, you know, I'm like a dog, a puppy dog. I just do exactly as I'm told. So I ate something, got into the car, slept, and then we ran down to Lone Pine because, you know, the whole point of the exercise was to try and beat the record. So my crew had to do what they thought was the best thing for me to do it. So I just had to do as I'm told, basically.
How steep is Mount Whitney? Like when you're coming back down it? Like I've seen footage on YouTube of, you know, the sort of the end part of Badwater, you know, the climb up. But coming down, is it still pretty steep coming down?
I think from the top, the top bit is the worst because it's all quite rocky. So that's the worst. But the rest of it actually is it's switchbacks. Yeah. So it's not nearly as bad as you might think. So it's quite nice paths all the way up actually. So it's not too bad. But going up is difficult because of obviously the altitude.
Do you remember your quads? Were they just absolutely smashed up as you're coming back down to do the second Badwater? G'day guys, Matt here. This podcast is a labour of love and all episodes are researched, scheduled, edited, created and promoted in my spare time. Typically, after an episode has been recorded, it can take another 3 hours of post-production activities to get the final cut. If I'm providing you with value and you wish to support my vision of sharing these inspirational stories to the world, you can do so at borntokickass.com and click on the Patreon banner. Your support will help to maintain the monthly podcast running costs and enable me to outsource repetitive tasks so I can bring you even more kick-ass episodes. Once again, if you want to support me in producing this podcast, head over to borntokickass.com and click on the Patreon banner. You can't miss it. And now back to the rest of the show. Do you remember your quads? Were they just absolutely smashed up as you're coming back down to do the second Badwater?
No, surprisingly, I think they actually felt all right. Actually, I remember just being tired, and on that last bit, the path had quite a few roots sticking out, and I remember always tripping up over those silly roots as I went down, and that was getting me really angry. I remember thinking, why don't they go away? But no, I don't remember. I think because, you know, we were not exactly speedy going up because of the altitude. I mean, one of my teammates actually had to go back down again because she got altitude sickness, and that was not very nice. And then coming down, you know, it's much easier. But no, it was, I mean, my legs were tired and I could feel it, but I don't remember sort of specifically worrying about them too much.
What's it like when you've come back down off Mt Whitney and then you're going to head back down to the basin where you're just heading into an oven? What's that heat like when you're, like I can try to imagine, you know, as you're on the outbound, you know, from the lowest point up to Mt Whitney, but going back the other way into the actual furnace. How difficult was that?
That was really tough, actually, and I think especially when we got to Stovepipe Wells, I think the wind picked up then as well, so which I hadn't experienced before. People talked about the wind and things, but this was right into your face. So it was very much, it was almost like somebody had a hairdryer set on full in my face the whole time. And you could imagine it just zaps all the moisture from your body. So there's nothing left in your eyes, your mouth. I mean, everything just gets taken away, and it's really hard work. So I found running was incredibly difficult. But I think the second half of the race was fantastic because, you leave Lone Pine and you've got all the runners who are then going home. And so they toot their horns as they drive past, or they stop, or they come out and find you and do a little running with you. And Marshal Ulrich came out and saw me as well, which was fantastic. I was like a sort of a child, in a sweetie shop. It was just fantastic. Yeah. No, it was really hard. It's that hairdryer effect. So you've got the wind and you've got the heat, and you're trying really hard to go forward. And I remember as we got to Furnace Creek, which in the actual race is the first checkpoint at just over 17 miles. And then you go right a bit further and you then go right down towards the basin.
Yep.
And I thought, well, once we go around the corner, the wind will stop. Well, it just seemed to get worse. The wind just didn't go away at all. It was there the whole time.
Do you ever,
so it was a really finish.
So I was just going to ask, do you still sweat? Like, if you've been out there for hours and hours and hours, initially you are going to sweat, but many, many hours into Death Valley, and you sort of mentioned that, such extreme heat, all the moisture, in your mouth and your eyes, and just everything's just sort of almost like bone dry. Do you ever get to the point where you sort of don't sweat anymore? There's sort of not really any moisture left in your body to sweat out, or not?
I think, yes, I think you do still sweat. The trouble is you just don't notice it because the moisture just gets taken away.
Yeah.
It's so yes, because if you look at your clothes afterwards, you've got this lovely sort of not yellow, but this white line, with salt from your sweating. So yes, I think you do, but obviously not quite as much. So you do not notice you're sweating at all. I mean, the crew will spray you down to try and cool your body, your core temperature and things. And, the water dries up almost instantly. It's that hot. Yeah.
Do you ever get...
and of course...
Sorry, yeah.
No, that's all right.
And I was just going to ask, do you get afraid of these challenges? Like the double-Badwaters, like how many people on Earth have ever done that? There wouldn't be many.
Oh, I don't know, actually. Some people have done, mad people have done the quads and things, haven't they?
Yeah, that's probably like, yeah, but even the double, it's probably, I don't know how many, but not many people on Earth have ever done this.
No.
It's incredible. But you've also done the double-Spartahlon. The Spartathlon in its own right is extreme. It's 153 miles from Athens to Sparta, and it's one of the iconic ultras on Earth, and you've done the double.
I know that was a moment of madness. It was I think I did the race in 2011, and you've got to do it in under 36 hours. And I think the one thing that is terrifying about the Spartathlon is that there are 74 checkpoints, not including the finish, and every single one of them has got its own cutoff.
Yep.
So you arrive just at the checkpoint to sort of find out, the checkpoint number, the distance, and then the time or the distance you then got to the next checkpoint and the time that checkpoint's going to close. So the whole time you're chasing the clock and you're chasing time. So it's a very, very tough race, and it's very hilly and it's on road.
Yep.
But yeah, I did it in 2011, and I still had to pinch myself actually for this, but I came third female in that one. So I was really, really happy. I mean, I think for me, that was one of my main fantastic achievements that, you're looking back and you just think, I never in a million years thought that I could even, complete that race, let alone, stand on the podium. Yeah. And so I wanted to go back in 2013 and try the double. And because no female at that stage, as far as I'm aware, had actually done the race and then turned around and run back again. So I wanted to try and be the first female to do that. So in 2013, I went out, and my body just wasn't playing games at all at that stage. I turned into this rag doll. And literally, if you see photographs of me, I'm sort of bent over backwards. So it looks as if my back is broken. And there was no pain at all. And I was slurring my words, apparently. And I was getting so slow that a medic had to come with me in the end. And I got timed out on the last or the penultimate checkpoint. And I mean, that was, devastating. You know, that everybody knew what I was trying to do. And as far as I was concerned, it was an epic failure in all proportions, because I just let myself down, and I hadn't completed it. But when we eventually got back to the hotel, I did say to my crew, I said, you know, we'll come back in 2015 and we'll complete what we set out to do. And thankfully, 2015, I managed to do the double.
It's it's quite hard to comprehend the pain that you went through. Just on pain, I just want to sort of touch on pain, like not just the physical pain, but the more intensive pain. You know, the emotional pain. You know how you sort of your body sort of hits that point where, you know, it's just painful. Every step is just full on. And then beyond that, there's the that real sort of emotional turmoil that you sort of go through. How do you deal with that? And do you have any tips that you sort of employ yourself to deal with that and sort of transcend that pain?
I think for me, it's sort of, you know, before you go and do the race, you know, you think about it, you know, before you go and do the race, that at some stage during that race, you're going to be in ridiculous amounts of pain, you know, especially something like Spartathlon or whatever. And so for me, ways of dealing with it when it arrives. So, for example, in the Spartathlon, when in 2013, I got to a stage where actually running was incredibly painful, because every step I took just sent this jarring motion all the way sort of up and down my legs and into my hips. And so I think, oh, for goodness sake, that's really painful. I'm going to walk. And you can't walk. I mean, yes, you can do a bit of walking, but you have to run. Otherwise, you're just not going to make the cutoffs. So you have to think, well, for me, what I do is I always think of the finish line. So before I go and do a race, I like to try and get a picture in my head of what the finish line looks like. And I visualize my family at the finish line waiting for me. And it seems to work every time. And if I then need a bit of an extra boost, I'll start talking to myself and just sort of say, Mimi, for goodness sake, this is your idea in the first place. Get off your backside, stop whinging, stop moaning, man up and get on with it. You know, and for me, that seems to work, you know, chatting to myself. Yep. I don't mind failure. You know, failure is, if you can learn from failure is fine. But you've got to try and give it your go. So I think, you know, before you go and do a race, try and have something that's going to give you a bit of a boost. So like the finish line, and, you know, picture that medal being put around your neck, getting to that finish line, lifting up your arms, and just, you know, that euphoria that you've done it, you've reached the finish line. It's silly things like that that will really give you a boost when you need it.
Of all the runs that you've done, whether it's in training or in an actual race or an expedition, have you ever had like an out-of-body experience where you've just sort of gone off? Like, have you ever sort of experienced that at all?
I've sort of been in situations where, you know, you're running along quite happily, you know, you're aware of everything, you're thinking about things, and you might have your music in. I don't always listen to music. And then suddenly, you know, you look at your watch and you've been running for 6 or 7 miles. And you think, my goodness, where did that time go? And you just, literally, it is, I suppose it's in the zone, isn't it? You just feel fantastic. And it's, you know, you're not thinking about anything. You're not listening to your music. You're there. So I've had that in a few races, actually, which has been really, really lovely.
Yeah.
And I think, the Arctic, when I did the Arctic race, I had a few times when I was just sort of in the moment. So you're not thinking about anything. You're not thinking about your family. You're not thinking about how hard it is. You're just in the moment. And I think that's really lovely, just to experience that peace and quiet and that tranquility. It's a very magical moment.
What about hallucinations? Can you maybe share a story of your most vivid hallucinations?
Oh, I've had loads of hallucinations. I have actually. One of them, actually, I have to say, the weirdest hallucination I've ever had. I mean, I had loads in the Arctic, and I had a few actually during my Badwater. But the weirdest one I ever had was I did a race a couple of years ago in India called Run the Ran, which was a 160-kilometer non-stop race, and it was into the sort of second night, and I'm completely and utterly by myself. And this particular race, there were no, it wasn't a marked course. You had to do it with your GPS. And I remember sort of running along, and I saw this, what looked like a sort of a helmet. It was very weird, actually. I mean, just literally this helmet, and it had a sort of a place where there were eyes. And I remember thinking, that's really weird. What is that? But this helmet started following me, and it got bigger and it got bigger. And it actually was pretty scary. And I just thought, my goodness, it's now turned into a person. And it was this big monster with this big head and this slitty, slit for the eyes. And so I ended up running faster, but it kept on getting closer and closer to me. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm running away from it, and yet it's getting closer and closer. Well, it turned out to be a tent for the checkpoint.
Did it?
But to me, it was a person, and this person was chasing me. And then later on, actually, again, you're going through various areas, and the undergrowth and the leaves and the branches become turned into people. I remember running through one place where there was. It was almost like the whole village were lined up either side of me, but it was all women holding their children. And I remember thinking, this is really odd. Why aren't the children in bed? What are they all doing here? And of course, there was nobody in sight. It was all the undergrowth. Yeah. So yeah, it's quite creepy when you're on your own.
Yeah, it would be. Just want to ask about fear. Do you ever get afraid of some of these challenges that you do, like, the Namibian Desert Challenge, or, the double-Comrades that you did, which you were the first female and fourth person ever to achieve? Do you ever get afraid of what you're about to embark on, or not?
No, I wouldn't say I get afraid. I always get quite excited about it, because I think, I do like setting myself challenges. So no, I never think about the fear factor, going out and doing the Arctic race or Namibia, as you said, and various other races. And even the Indian one, I never think about any situations that are going to happen that are quite scary. Perhaps I live in this little bubble where I think that nothing's ever going to happen to me. I just think about the adventure, and whatever happens during that adventure, you deal with. You just, there were moments in the Indian race where actually I was in the middle of nowhere. My GPS wasn't working. I knew I was sort of in the right area, so I wasn't completely lost, but there was nobody else around. And so there was a moment of total sort of panic. So I thought, my goodness, I'm going to be stuck here for days by myself and run out of water. So I had to logically go, Mimi, okay, take a deep breath, turn your GPS off, turn it back on again. Don't panic. You can get out of this. So I always think there's no point. You can prepare for stuff, but there's no point panicking or worrying about stuff until it actually happens, really.
Yeah.
And then you deal with it, because you deal with it in a completely different way when you're out there than you would if you were at home thinking about it.
Yeah.
And you probably actually never go and do an adventure, would you?
Yeah,
if you thought about it much.
Now, what was the you did the Freedom? Was it the Freedom Trail in South Africa?
The Freedom Trail in South Africa, yes,
What was that like?
Oh, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
South Africa is one of my most favourite countries. I've got some great, great friends there, and I was looking for an adventure. And various of my South African friends said, well, what about doing the Freedom Trail in South Africa? And it was originally set up as a mountain bike race. And so I looked at it and I thought, okay, looks quite good. Quite like the look of that. And the year that I was actually going to do it, another girl, Emma Timmis, went and did it. So I had my Spartathlon and I had my double-Badwater. So I thought, actually, it's not a good year to do it anyway. So Emma went and completed it. She became the first woman to ever do the Freedom Trail. And then myself and another lady called Samantha Gash, who's actually an Australian lady, went and did it in 2014. And yeah, it was an amazing adventure. You know, we did an ultra a day for 32 days, and we ran through some extraordinary, beautiful, beautiful locations. We were looked after by some fantastic families along the route. We saw some, we ran with wildlife. I mean, it was tough as well. I think Samantha and I didn't know each other really terribly well. And so she always says it's a little bit like being in an arranged marriage. You get to know each other as you go along. Yeah. But, you work as a team, don't you? So we worked as a team and it worked really, really well. Yeah. But that was an extraordinary adventure. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. I love that sort of thing.
So just for listeners, how far was that approximately?
It was, well, there are different sort of routes that you can take. So our route was just under 2,000 kilometres. Yeah. And it starts in Pietermaritzburg and it finishes in Paarl, just outside Cape Town. So it's not a nice marked route at all. We used GPS and we did have maps and things, but they weren't terribly good. So, you're having to sort of navigate yourself the whole time, which makes it even tougher. Makes your days much longer and things. Yeah. And accommodation along the route, there are no nice hotels. You're staying with families or in lodges and things. So, but it's very remote. Some of the areas we go through are so remote that many of the South Africans will never, ever get to see them. So we were very, very lucky.
Yeah. What was the wildlife like? Was there any potential for some of the nasty animals that you could potentially get eaten by, or what was the sort of?
No, luckily for us, there was no. We went through various nature reserves and game reserves, but they tended to be. We did see some rhinos one day on one of the days that we went through, but actually they were all fenced off because it was a private game reserve. So any animals that we did see tends to be sort of antelope or warthogs or anything like that. So any of the dangerous ones would be behind fencing. So so from that respect, it wasn't dangerous at all. Because I think mountain bikers are doing exactly the same route. So you couldn't go anywhere where there'd be a lion or a cheetah. There was apparently a leopard in the last valley that we went through, which was stunning. It was an 8-kilometre long valley on the last day that took us over 6 hours to do. So it was very technical. But apparently there was a leopard that lived there, but we didn't see her, which was rather sad, really. But so that there was wildlife around that was potentially dangerous. We never saw it.
So what's your sort of fuel of choice during a particular ultra? No, I'm not talking like excluding the Arctic because that's sort of extreme cold, but and maybe excluding Badwater because that's extreme heat. Something in the middle, temperature-wise. Do you have a particular fuel strategy that you employ on most of your runs? Food-wise or fuel-wise?
No, because again, you see, I get very fussy. It's funny. I'll have all this of stuff with me, and then actually I'll decide that I don't particularly want it. So if, for example, I'm doing a sort of 100-miler and I've got support crew, they will meet me every, 10 miles or whatever it might be and give me food. So they will have a sort of a selection. and I'm never allowed to go off unless I have something. So that could be a banana or some malt loaf or something like that, and I'll carry a protein bar or something with me. But it all depends on my mood. So, I could carry a protein bar and actually never eat it because I'm not in the mood for a protein bar. So it changes. I do tend to make my own trail mix, which would be made out of sort of nuts and raisins and dried fruit and various other bits, which for me seems to work quite well because it's just little bits at a time.
Yep.
So, no, you see, people will be listening to this thinking, Mimi, that's appalling. Your nutrition is just really bad. So I'm just not very good at sort of, some people are fantastic, aren't they? They'll have gels or they'll have whatever it is. I can't stand gels. They make me feel quite sick. So, and the drinks, energy drinks and things tend to make me feel not ill, but you get thirsty, I find, with them. So I prefer just drinking water. So no, I tend to stick to a sort of trail mix, and then my crew will give me stuff along the route. And if I won't eat it, they won't let me go on. So they're quite bossy with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes that's good. Having someone there to remind you to eat or force you to stop and try and get some food down you. Sometimes that's pretty good.
It is, because, I just don't get hungry.
Yeah.
And I know my body needs to, because actually if you don't eat, you then, as the run goes on, you're running out of energy, you become slower and slower. So you have to keep up your energy levels. So, and I just forget to eat. I mean, I'm absolutely awful. I think my poor crew they despair of me sometimes because I do forget to eat. Actually, for me, it's great having them there. Or I'll have drop bags where I pick up the food and I know that I've got to eat that before I get to my next checkpoint or stop.
Yeah. If you're going to, you're working towards a particular ultra, how do you sort of structure your training for a particular ultra? Do you try and mimic your training as closely as possible to the actual ultra that you're going to attempt? As in, like Spartathlon, for example, that's 153 miles on the road, pretty much. Do you then focus mainly on road running, or if you're going to do like a trail run with heaps of climbing, do you sort of focus your training on a lot of climbing? How do you sort of structure your training towards a particular ultra or expedition that you're going to do?
So for example, if I'm doing a race like the Spartathlon or Badwater, or it's a road race, then I will predominantly do road racing. I'll still go off and do some trail racing too, because I think that's, I enjoy it. But I do predominantly road because your legs have got to get used to running on the hard tarmac. So that's what I do. And but again, if I'm doing a trail run or it's hilly, I'll incorporate much more hills. And much more technical stuff. I'm not good on really technical stuff. So for me, if I'm going to go and do a slightly more technical race, then I need to go off and practice, because I'm just, especially the older I've gotten after various injuries and stuff, I'm sort of not very good on the technical stuff. You know how you see some people who can just hop, they just hop over rocks, don't they? Yeah. They just look as if they're flying over these rocks. Well, I look like a baby elephant doing that. So I'm not very good at that sort of thing. But yeah, so if I'm doing a trail race, I'll try and mimic my training as much as I can to the actual race. And again, with road racing, I'll go off and do most of my road racing. So at the moment, I'm doing mostly building up to doing mostly road. So which is a bit dull sometimes, it has to be said.
Just with all the running that you've done over all the years and all the miles that you've done, has running sort of taught you anything or given you anything in regards to life, or any sort of deep realizations or lessons you've sort of learnt from running?
Well, I think running for me, having sort of, had my eating disorder, and, I that in turn, I lost a lot of confidence in myself and my sort of ability to actually be any good at anything. And I think so running has taught me that actually I'm quite good at stuff. I'm much more resilient and stronger than I thought I was. which is fantastic. But it's also given me a huge amount of enjoyment and pleasure. You know, I've met some extraordinary people that I would never have met had I never taken up running. I've been to some places that I never in my wildest dreams thought that I could sort of do. And I hope all of that, because I enjoy my running, it's given me the space to sort of go out and do things away from my family and my children. So they would go off to school, I would go for a run, and they would come back, and hopefully I'd be a sort of much better, less grumpy mother because I'd had time to myself. You know, I think people, especially women, sometimes think that they shouldn't have time to themselves, and, you know, we shouldn't do this and we shouldn't do that. Well, actually, everybody deserves a bit of me time, a bit of time when it's, you know, you're away from your family, away from your husband, and it's just you and your own thoughts and doing what you want to do. So I hope it's made me a better and a nicer person to be around. But it's certainly made me much more confident. Yeah, and I am proud of who I am now, which I never was before.
Yeah. What's been your proudest moment in your running career? Is there sort of one race or expedition or anything like that that sort of sticks out as being your proudest moment or achievement?
Oh, it's such a difficult one because I'm so I don't know. I'm quite proud of most things I've done. I think the Spartathlon has to be right up there because when I podiumed, because I'm not a naturally fast runner. I mean, I'm really not. You know, you look at people now, and my goodness, their speed, their agility, you know, everything is just phenomenal. So, you know, compared to them, I'm probably quite a slow coach. But to get a podium on that, and I only went out I just wanted to complete the race. So when I then discovered that actually I was third, I've never worked so hard in my life to try and keep that third place. You know, that sort of determination sort of comes in. So that was a very, very proud moment. And I think also when I got my John O'Groats to Land's End world record, I mean, that was something I tried it the year before and had failed, but came back having learned a lot from my failure and my injury, and then became the female world record holder. So that, you know, that was quite something. You know, you read the Guinness Book of Records when you're a child, or my children would read it, and then to suddenly actually be in it. Yeah. That was quite special.
That's a famous route, isn't it, from the most northern part of Scotland to the south west of England, the most sort of southerly point.
All the way down to Cornwall, yes.
Is that like on the road, or is there like a marked sort of route or trail, that particular route? Or?
No, there's no, it's all road. You can do it on the trail. So there are some people who've done it on the trail, but if you're wanting to go out and set a record, the trail is not the fastest way to do it. So you choose the shortest possible route, actually, you're not allowed, obviously, to go on motorways and things like that. So you choose and devise your own route.
Yep. Yeah, I remember listening to another podcast, and I think it might have been, I remember you were sort of mentioning that you were pulled over by a policeman somewhere and you lost sort of 45 minutes. What sort of happened there? Or what was that about?
Oh, that was just, I mean, that was the most awful time. It was the last day, and it was very, very touch and go as to whether I was going to get the record. And my crew had, I mean, bear in mind, they are exhausted at this stage. And my crew had spent hours trying to work out in their fuddled brain what pace I had to keep above in order to get this record. So when I got up in the morning, which is my usual, so 4:30, and off I went, I wasn't allowed to stop. I had to keep going. I had to eat as I went. And so that was fine. And I was ahead of my schedule, feeling fantastic. And then we were stopped literally by this policeman on the A30. And he tried to divert us. And it was just, it was awful. You know, the diversion would have taken an extra 2 hours to do. So as my crew were trying to sort this out, I remember sending a text message to a friend of mine in South Africa, and I just said, well, I'll get to Land's End, but I'm not going to get the record. It's been taken away from me. And he rang me up and he said, yeah, you will, Mimi. He said, you'll get this record. He just treat it like a rest, eat and drink. And when you go, he said, you just go and get that record. But what it's like, you've been sitting in a car and, you know that it's so close as to whether you're going to get the record or not. And when eventually we could start going, for me, it was like all the lights had been turned out. There was no light at the end of that tunnel at all. And I was walking into darkness, and I tried so hard just to find a chink of light, something, just to get me back on track to make me feel positive again.
Yep.
And I then saw this sign that said Penzance 13 miles, and I thought, Amy, you can do that. That's half a marathon. And that, so it's amazing, isn't it, when you're feeling in your darkest moment, and that was a dark moment for me, because I just felt that we'd all worked really hard as a team to get to that point. We were so close, and then this one person, this one act had taken all that away. So, but it's amazing how you can find that chink of light from somewhere if you look enough. It does appear.
Yeah.
And that gets you back on track again.
Yeah, that's incredible. Just with your Badwater buckles, have you attach them to a belt at all, or are they just standalone buckles that you've got at home?
No, they're just standalone buckles. I have a cabinet, which actually my husband seems to have taken over with various things of his. So I have a cabinet at home that's got my buckles and stuff in, and then my medals are hanging up in the hallway.
Yeah.
Everybody used to think they were my children's. So let's point out they're mine.
Now, just on advice, if you could make a phone call to the 20-year-old Mimi Anderson and give her some advice, what would you tell her?
I think it would be not to be afraid to try stuff. Never be afraid to try something new, because, if you don't step outside your comfort zone sometimes, try something new. How are you ever going to discover whether you're actually good at it or not? So always give something a go. You might not like it, but give it a go. If you don't like it, you never have to do it again. But actually, you might discover that it's something you're quite good at.
Yeah. And whereabouts can people find you online?
I am my website is marvellousmimi.com, and my Twitter address is marvellousmimi. Everything is marvellousmimi. And then you can also, on Facebook, I've got a sports person's page, which is Mimi Anderson.
Yeah. Yeah, cool.
They can get hold of me there.
So are you planning on another adventure or race? Have you got anything sort of lined up that you're working towards, or is that it? You're just going to put your feet up now?
Oh, good grief, no. Can you imagine doing that? I'd be so bored. No, I haven't been able to run actually properly for months. So my poor husband has put up with this grumpy wife. Thank goodness we don't have children at home now, because otherwise it'd be awful. No, I am planning to run across America in September. So to try and break the female world record. That's my aim. That's what I'm training for at the moment.
All right. Yeah, well, are you injured now, or are you sort of coming off an injury, or?
I'm coming off an injury. I was supposed to be running across America in September last year. Yeah. And I got to the stage where, walking was really painful. Anyway, I had a torn lateral meniscus. Yeah. So I had to have knee surgery done, nothing major. So I'm now coming back off the knee surgery. So I'm now back to running. I did 23 miles yesterday. I was so excited. Not the fastest, but, I couldn't do that before. So, no, really pleased. I've taken it nice and steady, nice and easy. And I have to always remember that my goal is America. Yep. So I've been building up my distances. So terrifying, but quite exciting at the same time.
Yeah, well, good luck with your training and your recovery, and good luck with the America, your push for that record. Good luck with that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, post some stuff on Facebook and Twitter, and I wouldn't mind following your progress. That'd be good.
Yeah, no, definitely be doing that. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, thanks, Mimi. Thanks for coming onto the podcast.
That's a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay, cheers.
You've just been listening to the Born to Kick-Ass podcast at borntokickass.com. If you liked what you heard and want more, please subscribe on iTunes. Give a 5-star rating and a kick-ass review. This really helps to boost our presence and continues to allow us to introduce you to the most fascinating people on the planet. Welcome aboard and catch you next time.